Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond over in Germany, and we're going to jump into all things market, NFT, and see what's happening in the world of Web3. What's up, Alex? How you doing, buddy?
Hey man, I'm doing great. Especially now. We've all seen the bloodbath within the last 48 hours or something. And my plan was actually, to cry here and tell you how bad the world is. But looking at the charts right now, it looks like we've had a pretty good bounce already. Bitcoin is almost back to 100K. And still, it's so crazy to see if you observe the markets what emotions people go through just because of numbers going down. We did see a pretty big decrease in the altcoins again, and I think it was written, I'm not sure if that is actually validated yet, but I think it was written that we saw liquidations of 2.3 billion, which is supposed to be more than the Luna crash or the FTX crash. So yeah, like I'm not sure. Like, were you asleep when the big part of the crash happened, or have you seen all this and witnessed everything?
No, I was following it. I've been following the markets pretty closely, especially ever since, I got hit hard with my little security breach almost 2 weeks ago. So I've been looking for buying opportunities, and obviously this was one of them. Bitcoin pulled back. They keep saying crash, but Bitcoin pulled back like 7-8%. It wasn't really that big of a deal. And, if you could buy it in the low 90s, to me, that's a pretty good entry point. So I've just been buying. I was picking up some Bitcoin, picking up some stacks. And the reason I like stacks is because you can stake it and earn Bitcoin. So between Bitcoin and stacks, I also grabbed some Sol. I've just been on a little buying spree, enjoying the discounts. That's how I see it right now.
Yeah, it's true. Bitcoin hasn't really moved a lot, especially if you compare it to other coins. But I do get, altcoins haven't really been in a good position even before that dump, and then taking another 20-30% down was pretty tough for many people, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think it has been like the usual, what people like to call it, like market manipulation, or do you think it had to do something with the tariffs from Trump? What do you think was the main reason? We just got breaking news that the tariff on Mexico, I think, has been postponed for a month, and we see markets recovering now. So there might be a connection, right?
I think the tariffs had everything to do with it because most of your mainstream media and economists were basically touting this as a negative thing for all parties, for the U.S. and for their trade partners. And I think that, obviously when you have short-term news, it takes time to digest it. And the average person doesn't really think past what they see on the news. And this includes a lot of investment banks and investment firms because they know that their people who invest with them are going to be all up in arms and wondering what they're doing. So they kind of have to follow the markets and follow the zeitgeist, if you will. Is that a German word, by the way? Zeitgeist?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. Anyway, they have to sort of follow the leader when this stuff happens. There's certain expectations placed on them. And now that we've got, big players in the marketplace, I would just expect this to become normal. If you get some sort of perceived negative news, expect the traditional banks to sell the news. Just expect it. It's going to happen. But then expect them to buy it back, 2 days later or a day later when everything settles out. So Trump tariffs definitely had, I think, a huge impetus, if not the impetus, behind the drop. And again, I think it's just a buying opportunity for anyone who understands that Bitcoin's not going away. As far as the altcoins go, I feel like the story is going to be the same on them that I've been sort of preaching about for the last year and a half. We've been talking about this stuff. The major alts, the only alts that are actually going to retain their value are the ones that have some sort of interesting feature. So we're calling them, feature chains now. And they need to be something that tech can be built on top of because they're not a store of value. Okay, so if you have something that tech can be built on top of, and you've got a big developer community behind it, or massive adoption, like in the case of ETH being, really the first primary altcoin to Bitcoin, and then then you have Solana, which is kind of like the faster version of Ethereum. And both of those chains have similar functionalities, but very different speeds, very different features. And, right now there's been a lot of attention placed on Solana because of its, sort of position as a NFT meme coin development platform, and the speed at which it operates, coupled with, like good quality wallet UI like Phantom. I mean, it makes it very difficult for something like ETH to compete, especially when you're, playing around with a MetaMask wallet. And MetaMask is one of the worst wallets I've ever used, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
But
at the end of the day, I think everything, again, is we're going to consolidate around featured value, and that's what's happening. So I don't expect all alts to run, to be honest with you.
yeah, but I mean, you mentioned ETH and you mentioned like the first mover advantage. I mean, ETH lost like $1,000 within 3 days. Do you think overall ETH is in the position it is right now because of Solana, and Solana outperforming everything right now?
I don't know. I think ETH is in the position it's in because they've made a lot of bad decisions. The first one was switching from proof of work to proof of stake. And the second one, I think, really was just like concentrating the sort of decision making around the Ethereum Foundation. I think on the Spaces, Jilly was talking about ETH being the only decentralized platform. Well, it's not really true. Like ETH, from what I understand, like the vast majority of ETH servers are on an Amazon server farm, and they're not distributed. They're not really run by they're not really co-located in different places in the world, and the ETH Foundation controls a massive portion of the wealth. So, I mean, at the end of the day, ETH is sort of like the first attempt at decentralization off of and away from Bitcoin. But when they, again, switched from proof of work to proof of stake, you had all these miners dropping out of the network because now there was no money for them to make. So at the end of the day, I think they basically consolidated more of their network around the computer systems that they host on Amazon, and then the Ethereum Foundation. Whereas Solana is a little bit less expensive to operate. I mean, still it's expensive to run a validator, but it's not impossible to get a validator up and running that, will pay you in Sol. Whereas I think it's, with ETH, it's very different. So I think just a lot of the newer people coming to the market see the difficulties, the barriers to entry. And I think there's just a lower barrier to entry for Solana right now.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Jilly, and when we were on Spaces, I actually had so many questions regarding her love for ETH. Unfortunately, I was cut out, but yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm obviously a much bigger fan of Solana as well, and I feel like ETH has made like tremendous mistakes in the past. I'm not really sure if I got what Jilly meant when she, talked about ETH and that she thought it's like the best chain we have. Was it like, I'm not sure if you were able to follow her, but was it like more like emotional? And because, it's been like the first one and she has her collection on ETH, and like, or was she able to explain it in like a technical way?
No, I mean, she's the first one to say, listen, I'm not a developer or a tech person. So, and this isn't, this isn't anything against Jilly. I love Jilly. And I think that, we just disagree on certain things. So I don't really want to talk too much about her because she's not here to defend her position. But I feel like when it comes to what you're doing, whether you're on Ethereum or Solana or, Bitcoin or whatever your pet chain is, you have to be the biggest supporter and cheerleader for what it is that you're doing. And I see that in Jilly. Like, I think she's the biggest supporter of what she's doing. And that creates confidence in the marketplace for the people who want to run with her. Like, I'm happy to run with Jilly on ETH. ETH isn't my favorite chain, but I'll run with her on ETH. I bought a couple pieces, even though they got ganked recently. And, I'll end up getting some more. And I'll run with her because she's a believer in what she does. I don't think ETH is going anywhere. I don't think ETH is in danger of, sort of losing dominance anytime soon. But, in a lot of ways, ETH reminds me of the iPhone. There hasn't been a whole lot of innovation, since Steve Jobs died. And there hasn't really been a whole lot of innovation on ETH ever since they switched from proof of work to proof of stake, which granted was a massive technical accomplishment. I'll give them that. I don't think it served them, but there's nothing that you can do on ETH that you can't do on any other chains for the most part. So it just comes down to, if you're a developer, which account model do you like best, and what speed do you like best, and what language do you want to work in. I mean, ultimately, the end user is going to care about the user experience. They don't care about all this underlying technology just yet. So, I mean, I think really, again, one of the things that Jilly and I agree on heavily is the fact that we are incredibly early to this marketplace. This marketplace is barely 10 years old, if we're being honest. So, as more and more UI gets created that is actually beneficial to people, more and more use cases and functionality that people can actually, flip up some little, phone app and not really realize that they're using a wallet, but they're kind of using a wallet, but not really. And they're, it's all obfuscated. They're just enjoying a good user experience. That's where we have an opportunity to shine, regardless of if it's ETH or Solana or whatever. It doesn't really matter. So I think that's really all that matters when it comes to chain. And, just like us, like we're going to promote our project. We're going to promote Solana Tech until Solana Tech proves that it can't keep pace with other, parts of the tech sector. And then we could always move our art. So it always comes down to me to like, what IP do you own? Where do you want it to live? And then what can you do with it? And then can you create beautiful user experiences? And we're in the beginning of all that. So whether ETH is better Solana or ordinals are better, who cares? It doesn't really matter. It reminds me of like, two drunk jackasses at the bar arguing over which football team is better. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one final statement to Jilly. I mean, I think what's most important is that we share the same values, but not always the same opinion, and that's actually a great thing, because it's like it can lead to great discussions. And if Jilly comes around and tells us like you need to trade meme coins to make money, then it's her opinion and it's great. I mean, she's not a yes sayer, basically agreeing to everything we say. And I think this is much more valuable for a conversation instead of just people agreeing all the time.
Oh man.
But one more thing I just read, which was quite interesting, because maybe we see a shift here. Maybe people want physical assets again. Gold reaches a new all-time high. What do you think about that?
I think I might have to consider selling some of mine. I don't know. Let's see. What is the gold price? Let me see. I'm just pulling it up right now.
Yeah, 2,829. I'm not sure. Like, I've never followed the gold price, so.
Oh, it's up. Yeah, I mean, it's up a fair amount. I mean, it's been around 27-ish for a while, and I haven't really seen it do much more than that. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely up, but I mean, it's been a very slow mover. I see silver's up a little bit as well. I don't think there's anything earth-shattering there, really. I think just, people buy this type of stuff when fear is in the marketplace, So, like, I think the tariff talk has created a lot of fear for people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but, like, wasn't that what Bitcoin was supposed to be? Like the safe haven when everything goes crazy, just invest in Bitcoin, digital gold, and now people go back to gold? What do we think about that?
I don't think the people buying Bitcoin are buying gold, and I don't think the people buying gold are buying Bitcoin. I think it's two different markets altogether. Like I'm sure there's a few people who came from the traditional investing world and they've invested in Bitcoin. But I think most of that is just people who've traditionally done what they've traditionally done versus not. One of the key leaders in sort of financial education from the early years here in the States and actually globally is Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki is well known for making money on his books and his IP, basically his game and real estate. And most recently, over the last couple of years, he's been talking a lot about Bitcoin. And he owns Bitcoin. I think when the Bitcoin crashed, he bought, I think he said like 70 or 80 tokens. So, I mean, he's a big holder of Bitcoin, and he's basically saying that, you should be buying right now. I just saw an article somewhere on one of the crypto websites where, he's basically saying the same thing that I'm saying, which is that, actually, here's the headline: Bitcoin crash may be good. Rich Dad Poor Dad author Kiyosaki says Trump tariffs put pressure on crypto. And basically all he did was tweet that, let's see, Trump tariffs begin, gold, silver, Bitcoin may crash. Good. We'll buy more after prices crash. Real problem is debt, which will only get worse. Crashes mean assets are on sale. Time to get richer, right? So, I mean, he's one of those guys who's kind of seen the light, and he's got so much money now that, I mean, it doesn't really matter if he's wrong. It's like he could put money into Bitcoin and not feel it. So, I think he's basically seen the light, and he's looking for new opportunities, and he sees Bitcoin as a modern store of value. Whereas a lot of people who are in the traditional investing markets buy, they might buy an ounce of gold, once every 3 or 4 months. They might buy silver every week. They're building a little cash hoard of precious metals on the side, but they're not actually like big time high roller type investors like he is. And I don't think they're going to be buying Bitcoin anytime soon, or if they do, they're going to be buying in small amounts. So I just feel like it's two different populations, except for with a minor overlap. And I mean, obviously over time, that overlap will get larger as more and more people come to the value proposition of Bitcoin.
But today, when I first saw the news about gold, I tried to remember whether, right now, nowadays Bitcoin has become quite strongly correlated with the stock market. Do you remember if it has been differently back in the days, 2017 or like earlier? Do you feel like Bitcoin has always moved along the stock market, or do you feel like that has changed recently?
So the question is Bitcoin moving with the stock market, or is gold moving with the stock market?
I'm talking about Bitcoin now because usually when I try to remember, back then it was always said that Bitcoin is not moving with it, but right
Mm-hmm.
now it obviously does. So yeah, like do you see, because like I said, we talked about Bitcoin or gold being the safe haven when things go crazy, and now Bitcoin correlates with the stock market so much. Is it anything other than a stock then in the end?
I think it is for people who understand it. For people who don't understand it, probably not. And I mean, you're going to have people who are short-term traders in all markets, and that's normal and natural. But I think that what we will see and what we are seeing is that the more traditional sort of TradFi money that comes into the crypto space, whether it's Bitcoin or ETH or Solana or what, pick one, doesn't really matter. The more traditional funds and fund managers who come into the space, the more traditional fund manager thinking you're going to have in the space. So if they have this idea that, Bitcoin is a safe haven, then you'll see the fund managers who think Bitcoin is a safe haven buying it in times of trouble. And you'll see them selling it at other times, right? Versus there'll be fund managers who believe that, when the stock market is going down because Trump talks about tariffs, that Bitcoin will fall as well, and they will sell their Bitcoin, right? So I think it's an alignment of thinking where you have bigger money run by the same minds who run, traditional finance markets. They're going to do the same thing in these markets until they understand them differently, or unless and until they understand them differently.
Mhm. Yeah, I get that. Regarding the price movements these days, I actually read a lot about exchanges basically manipulating markets. I think the name that was dropped most of the times was Binance. And it has shown that Binance basically sent coins to market makers. I think the one was called Wintermute. And I'm not sure like what like the way of making money for them is, but inflows and outflows showed that they had a net profit of like 4 billion within the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I mean, I think if you want to understand how prices are made on coins, you need to understand order books and everything. Because what I read a lot was basically, okay, they invested like, or they sent like 15 billion or like hundreds of millions to the market makers. How is that supposed to move prices that much? But in the end, if you need to, like, you need to see how the Bitcoin price, and that it's basically um the um like you need to see what people are willing to pay for it. Like, if you check order books, for example, you see the bids. And um and like, do you think exchanges actually have such a big impact on prices, or do you think, like, I think at the beginning you said it was mainly about the tariffs. um do you think there's nothing like that, in the background moving prices?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it, right? If you're talking short term, then anyone who's a large holder or a large buyer can move the market. There's no doubt about that, right? Like, it's just not possible for someone who is a smaller holder to do the same thing. So, in a world where exchanges sort of open up the market to any player anywhere with any amount of funding, then of course exchanges play a role in ultimately where the price is going to go, right? That there's no way for them not to. But by the same token, it's not really the exchange, it's just the amount of transaction volume or trade volume, if you will, that's occurring over a short period of time. So just like when, look at the German sale, right? Like, your home country sold off, what was it, 50,000 Bitcoin, about 6 or 7 months ago, whatever it was. And then what happened in the market? Not much, and then whatever did happen, it kind of bounced back. And the same is true right now. We've got massive holders, like you mentioned. What did you say? Like something like, what was the volume that you mentioned that was sold off over the last day or two? Was it 2 billion or something like that? What was it that you said?
2 billion in 2.3 billion in liquidations, but obviously the total outflow was a lot bigger.
Okay, so let's just go with the 2.3 billion. I mean, that's a pretty big buy in the Bitcoin world when the market cap is 2 trillion, right? So basically 1% of the market was traded. Let's assume it was 2 or 3, given the fact that, other players would have been, in the markets as well. What happened? Well, Bitcoin lost 8%. And then today, it's already back to, I think it just crossed 100,000 again right now. So, I mean, short term, yeah, for sure, it can definitely have impact. But where value is, money will flow. So if people obviously who were paying attention saw value in Bitcoin in the low 90s, which I think it dropped all the way down to like 91 USD. I was a buyer. Obviously, other people were buyers as well.